going, about to go live. Okay, I think we're recording.
All right.
Hello,
Yeah,
ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome again to yet another broadcast on Reform Nigeria Live. Today I'm joined with by Festus Adibe. My name is Deji Yusufu. I'm broadcasting from Ibadan City, the only city in probably in Nigeria. Okay, until Festus disputes that. But I'm joined by Festus Adibe, and in a moment we're going to begin to discuss. We are discussing an issue. Actually, it's a what will I call it now? It's the inting, or is what is happening, is what is most talked about today in Nigeria. At work today, I saw some people talking about it, so I can suspect that that's what many of people are talking about. Is this paternity issues? Okay, so we're talking on paternity issues and DNA testing, but we're actually going to look at it all from a Christian perspective. Okay, so we have Festus live from Enugu State with us. Mr. Festus Adibe, you're welcome.
Hello.
Thank you. All right. Okay. So Festus, will you kindly tell us about yourself? Who is Festus Adibe, and so on and so forth, before we kick off?
Okay. Hi. My name is Festus Adibe. I'm an architect. I design buildings. That's what I do for a living. I've been a Christian since 1997. Recently, I stopped being a Pentecostal Christian. I know that you was asking, I think earlier before we came online, you were asking me if reformed, like if I hold. So at the point, I think I started to lean Calvinist, but I wouldn't say that quite yet. But that's where I live. I wouldn't go, and I wouldn't say I'm full reformed on Calvinist fully. I consider myself one, but how do I put it? There are still parts that I don't completely agree with, like things like cessation and stuff like that. So yeah.
All right. Okay.
I've been watching you talk about cessationism, and I've not commented, but that's something.
That's okay. That's okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Otherwise,
thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So otherwise, about what we're going to be talking about today. For me, apart from being a Christian, something that is a concern of mine is men and masculinity and what men are about and how men should be and how they should behave and comport themselves. I kind of think that our culture, we've sort of lost what manliness is about, and that's sort of where I am. Basically.
Okay. Yes. In fact, by the way, that's something I read a lot on your timeline. If you go to Festus Adibe on Facebook, you can follow him up there and see some of the things he writes. He writes a lot about men. He says things like, "Don't be a girly man." Where did you get that term? Where did you get that term from?
It's actually from Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Okay.
Yes, it's something he says when he said it is about being strong. Doing it, but I think that's sort of the sentiment I have. I think men are becoming less manly, and I think it's a good thing to be proud of it, to be proud of being strong, to be proud of being a leader and all that sort of stuff. Yes.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Festus, let me give a background to this story on the DNA testing thing, and then I will ask you your thoughts on it all. Okay. Okay. So it's not news, but just in case there are people who may not be aware of it. In fact, before this particular incident happened, in the Nigerian life, generally, we have had situations where a lot of people have had to leave the country. Probably they want to go to Canada, go to America, and so they go to the embassies, and the embassies demand people to do DNA testing. Okay, especially for the children that they are taking out of the country. Okay, so they ask, provide us the DNA to show that you are truly the father or the mother of these children. Okay, and when it comes to DNA testing, usually, in fact, it is both parties that is put at stake, but it is the woman that is really at the other end the most. You understand? Because she is the one that is said to have given birth to these children. Okay, so on the 15th of December last year, a man by the name of Tunde, Festus, help me with the name again. Tunde
Thomas, I think.
Tunde Thomas. Tunde Thomas died. Tunde Thomas died suddenly of a heart attack. Okay, and while he was buried on the 30th of December, and while his friends were mourning him, one of them, a smart aleck among them, went on social media and framed this story, which is actually a true story. But he framed the story, and the story went viral. He linked Tunde's death to his heartbreak that he had experienced in 2017. So what happened in 2017? Tunde's wife, one Moyo Thomas, left the country with 3 of their children. Okay, and I think maybe either when she arrived there in America or while before they left, while taking the DNA test, she told Tunde that these 2 of the children, the 2 older ones, are not his children. Okay, and Tunde was heartbroken. I think even it was said that he had some health challenges at that time. She went on to tell him that the father of those children was her boss in the office. Okay, so the boss turns out to be one Mr. Nuru, who is the managing director of FCMB. Okay, he's the present managing director of FCMB. Okay, so after this gentleman had written the whole story on social media, he went on to demand that FCMB should sack this man. And before you knew it, the whole place went, the thing went viral, and people began to pick up the story. Different versions started running around, and everybody were coming to the same conclusion: this man must be sacked. This man must be sacked. To the extent that FCMB had to bring out a notice, or they made a public announcement and said that they are investigating the matter. Okay, so my friend Festus Adibe made a Facebook post. I can't even remember how both of us went head to head on this matter, because I was taking the middle line, but you took, I think, somehow a far-ended side. So can you just take it up from there?
Festus? Okay, so I think where we disagreed was on your post, and you said something about if a man, if you discover that your wife had a kid for someone else, and then at some point during the child's life you find out that this is not your kid or not your kids, that what you should do, I think we're suggesting that the Christian thing to do would be to take those kids in. That it doesn't matter who donated the sperm, but it should be there for the children.
Yes. Okay, I was the one that made the post.
That was where I disagreed with you, yes.
Oh, okay. So, Festus, can you just go ahead with us based on your own, let me use the quote, manly position? Let us know what do you think? What do you think about this situation? What I mean, I've given the background. Tell us, what should the man do, or how should we handle this situation? Just give us a brief.
Okay, so I don't think it's not necessarily. I don't think it's a manly quote unquote thing per se. I just think it's a matter, for me, it's a case of fraud, and not so much infidelity. So yes, infidelity has occurred. So the woman has gone out and she's had sexual relations with someone else. Now, as a man, so Christ, what Christ tells us anyway, that we should not divorce except in cases of sexual immorality. However, if it was, and I remember on the post I said, if it was that the woman, after, let's say, she went out, had sex with another man, came back of her own free will, confessed to her husband and said, look, so and so happened. I went with my boss on a holiday or on a trip, and one thing led to another, and we had sex.
Okay.
And unfortunately now I am pregnant. Now, as a man, or let me speaking for myself, and speaking for myself, it would hurt. It would hurt. It would take a while. It would be hard. But I think I could come around to forgiving that. Okay, I think I could. I think some men could. Now, there's something about forgiveness, and there's something about Christianity. So in Christianity, we teach to forgive. But as much as we implore people to forgive, we should also remember that forgiveness is not a right. And I don't think it's fair to demand that someone, okay, you should allow the person to come to it than making it, oh, if you don't, you've been hurt this way, and if you don't forgive somehow, if you don't forgive and grant her, like you can forgive and still say, okay, no, I forgive, but this marriage is not going to work anymore. But if you don't forgive and sort of bring her back to a place where it was as it was exactly before, where you're still married, where you're now raising these children, I don't think we should force men to do that. Now, as a man, you could, for me personally, and this was me speaking in recommendation, but personally, I could think about, I could see myself forgiving if she confessed. But then in a situation where not only does she do this, she stays and sees me raise those kids, knowing that those kids are not mine. She's done it once, done it twice, and just watches me raise them. Maybe I make some money, I go hungry, you know, all the things the sacrifices the father makes for his children. And she watches all that happen. While she knows I'm not the father, the actual father who is responsible for these kids is scot-free somewhere. She sees all that happen. And it takes maybe trying to go to Canada or something. And then a DNA test happens. And then we now find out that these are not my kids. From the point she lets that happen, it's no more a case of infidelity anymore. It's now fraud. Okay, and I don't see how such a woman would love such a husband. You know, living with him day to day, seeing all that happen. Now, once that happens, and you know, it's come up at that point, look at what we're now dealing with. These are not my kids. You didn't tell me. The kids are now 5, 6, 7 years old. So maybe for the past 7 years, you've seen me going through this, you know, slaving away for these children. They were sick. I ran around. When they were hungry, I worked extra hard, went hungry just to keep them. And you didn't do anything, didn't say anything. And at this point, we now know that they're not my kids. I think the woman should. At that point, I don't see the marriage happening anymore. So I would end the marriage. One, I would think the woman should leave, and with the kids as well.
You mean the kids should leave also?
I would see. I don't. Okay, once the woman leaves, I don't see how the kids stay. And the reason is this. So if a divorce or a separation were to happen, you would have a case where the question will now come up: what will be done about custody of the kids?
Okay.
Okay. So once that question comes up, now I don't see the basis for sharing custody.
Yeah.
They're not my kids. You get? It's going to be hard because ideally I would have formed a relationship with those kids. Yes. And maybe I would have had things in their lives. But I don't see how, assuming the woman is not willing to give up custody of the children, she has a much stronger claim. They're not my children. I don't even see the grounds on which I would argue for visitation rights. What would I be visiting as? Do you get uncle that is not really uncle? Do you get that kind of thing? So at that point, it's best for me, I believe, to just cut ties. And
okay, Festus, you mentioned fraud. I hope I can get back to it. But when I visited Enugu, my friend John told me a lot about this this strong filial connection between men and their sons. Okay, he told me, in fact, he took me to a burial, and he showed me the culture of how the first son buries the father. Okay. Yeah. Adibe, are you sure you're not speaking from a cultural perspective? Are you sure it is not that strong bond between what is of my flesh that are you sure that's not where you're talking from? You know, that you're, because the question I really want to lead on to is, can't fraud be forgiven? Because you see, if fornication, adultery be forgiven, can't fraud also be forgiven?
Yes, it can. Yes, it can. But then when it is forgiven, you know, what would forgiveness look like? That's another question. So if someone defrauds me of money, what does forgiveness look like? So what forgiveness to me looks like is to say, okay, go and sin no more. I'm not going to press charges. I'm not going to enact some sort of vengeance. I'm not going to punish you. But then I wouldn't continue to forgive me. I don't continue to give you money. So let's say someone has been defrauding me and maybe he set up a scheme where I pay him 1,000 naira every month, okay, for some promise of something he's going to give me that never shows up. And then I find out that this guy is defrauding me, all right? Yeah,
Yes.
what forgiveness is, okay, so you defrauded me, I can report you to the police.
Yeah, but don't forget that we're talking about husband and wife now.
Yes,
There's
I
a
understand
stronger
it's husband
bond.
and wife. I understand it's husband and wife.
Yes.
So, like, these are all the things. So, what is the fraud in this? So, the fraud in this is she's making you make sacrifices that you would not otherwise have made. All right. So, this is not your kid. All right. That's when we get married and we have children. I'm not married yet, so maybe I'm not speaking from experience. But when we get married and we have children, what we want is this thing of, you know, I want to have kids and I want to take care of them and I want to do things for my kids. I'm not thinking of taking care of some other person's kids. The basis of all those sacrifices are because I believe that these are my kids.
My children.
So when I've been defrauded into that, I've been cheated, and I'm made to make sacrifices. Maybe there are jobs I could have taken, I didn't take them. There are career goals I would have reached that I've lost out on. All of this because of the kids. And then I now find out, and I forgive. Okay, you know, there's unfortunately we don't have
this your forgiveness has come out.
Wait, unfortunately we don't have. I think personally, I think it's actually a bad thing that paternity fraud is not punished by the law, because it fits everything that fraud looks like. Okay, so I think paternity fraud should be punished by the law, but it's unfortunate that it's one of those lacunas that somehow no one punishes it. But I think it's everything like fraud. Okay, and all this happens, and I don't, you know, I'm not enacting vengeance. But all I'm saying is, okay, I can't continue to partake in this farce. I forgive. I'm not going to try to take anything from you. Just go. That's it. I don't believe in you know, for me in particular, let me not speak for everyone, but for me, keeping the woman in and continuing to raise those children, every day I'll be reminded that, you know, this was something I was deceived into. Why am I doing this? But that's why I said it's a different case if she came to me early and said, see, I made a mistake and I got pregnant. Okay? Now that will hurt as much. Yeah. But then I could say, okay, the fact that you told me, I am now choosing to adopt this baby. I forgive you. Don't do it again, but a mistake has been made. You didn't go there planning to get pregnant. You got pregnant. We now have to live with the results. I'm making that choice. But then it's a different thing where I didn't make that choice and I've been deceived into it. Okay? So once that happens, any other thing I'm doing again is partaking in the fraud. Like I'm still allowing myself to be victimized, and I don't think that's fair, you know, to men or even to women. And I think I made an example of if the opposite was the case. Yes.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Festus. You, so far in your response, you have been looking more from your own personal perspective, and because we're speaking to an audience, where I want to ask that maybe you try to direct admonition. This thing. I just want to change it a little bit. Do you have any experience along this line, maybe which you can share, maybe, and how did it pan out?
Personally,
no, not personally. Maybe you've had somebody, it happened to a family, you know, or something like that.
No, I've not. Okay. I've not had any family member who has.
Okay. All right. Okay. What's your thought on this? Because women generally are kind of very threatened by this whole thing. In fact, I was just saying on Naira Land that in Ghana, they burnt down a paternity test, a DNA testing center. I just saw the listing. So women are very threatened. There was a sister who came on Facebook yesterday. In fact, you won't believe it. I invited her to this discussion because you are taking a particular extreme, probably extreme right. She took an extreme left. So I wanted her to come and present her views. And then but she said she wouldn't come, you know. So I went on her page yesterday, and she was like, why I'm Christian brothers talking so much about this issue. Just keep quiet. What is it? Nobody is, she was really. So and then she now said, she said that if you guys had put your house in order, this kind of a thing would not have happened. So that was where I got a little upset. I was, look, so now my own question to you now is, what do you think about women being a little bit threatened with this story? Why do you think there's that reaction?
If someone is threatened, it's probably because the person is guilty, and I don't believe that all women will be threatened. I don't even think that most women are paternity fraudsters to start with. So I don't think most women. I think personally I think that the vast majority of women aren't deceiving their husbands into, but there's a few of them who are, okay.
Yeah.
And there was something, I think there was this preacher who I was listening to, and he said one thing, and he was talking about when, how do I put it? So he was talking about how to know when the Holy Spirit is not like, hasn't touched the heart of someone and drawn the person to God. And he gave an example where if you do something wrong to someone, and the person, let's say, I'll give the example he gave. And the example was, let's say I park my car, me and you have a dispute, and we're neighbors, okay? And then one day, you go and scratch my car, you take your key and run from one end of the car all the way across, okay? And I come out, give me a minute, someone is knocking on my door, please.
Okay, so I'll just pause. So we're on.
Okay, so we're on. So he was talking about, so imagine someone, let's say we're neighbors and you don't like me for some reason, and so you go to my car and you run your key across it and scratch, leave this huge scratch. And I come out and I don't know who did this, all right? And I talk to you, you say you didn't see anybody, but then deep down you're laughing, mocking me. And then somehow it turns out that maybe the house opposite has a security camera.
Okay.
And I go to them and then there's a video of you, scratching my car. And I call you to my house the next day, give you a bottle of wine, give you some snacks, and while you're eating this stuff and, enjoying yourself, believing you've gotten away with it, I play the video of you scratching my car. Now, he said, how do you feel at that point? You who is the guilty person. And this was what he pointed out. He said, how you feel. So some people feel there's two ways. So one way you could feel is, oh my God, I've been caught. And then you're contrite and you apologize and you tell me how sorry you are. And then I forgive or not, or whatever. Or another way you could feel is anger. You've been caught, quite all right, but now you're angry. So you do this bold-faced thing. Hey, what is it now? Is it because of this? So he was saying that that's how you know. That's what it feels like for the Holy Spirit to draw a man unto God. So the person who is not drawn, it's anger. Okay? So even when the gospel is being shown, and that is the same thing with women like this. So there are women who, it's now in their face. You can be caught. This is how you can be caught. But because their hearts are hardened, so to say, they're going to go, oh no, instead, let us burn it down. Let's do this, let's do that. And such women should really, really worry. In fact, if I was a man, I say if I was a man, I'm a man already. If I was a husband to someone and I found my wife going, partaking in burning down it, or even arguing online somewhere, or someone I want to marry, arguing online how, yes, burn down the DNA place, I would go, okay, step back. this is a problem. You get what I mean? So
yes.
It's something you have to look at. Yes. So there's one way.
Reaction.
So there's one reaction, and such a woman who does that is hardened, and it's dangerous to be married to such a person.
There's this thing about, okay, well, I don't know the setting you work in. I suspect that you work from home. You're an architect, you work from home, right?
I work from home and then on construction sites when we start building.
Okay, all right. Yeah. But for those of us who are civil servants, there is this, of course, it's not something I witnessed in my office, but it's stories that you hear all over the place. This office romance thing, you understand? Yeah. So now I suspect that there's a rise in it in our own time because we have more women in the working class, other than probably the time of our parents or our grandparents, where women were at home and all of that. Well, I wouldn't say that it's obvious that this is a contributor to this matter. You understand? Because on a personal level, I'll confess that on a personal level, dealing with it in the office is one of my own biggest challenge. And I have to trust God to just keep my eyes straight. You understand? Knowing that this is a boundary, creating boundaries with the opposite sex and all of that. It's my biggest challenge in the office. It's not the work that I do. My biggest challenge is creating those boundaries and ensuring that those boundaries remain. Okay. Of course, for the person who is not a Christian doesn't even care about the boundaries. He's so happy to go over those boundaries. But what do you think about this issue of the fact that we are having more women in the workplace, office romance, and all of that, which of course must have led to what we are dealing with right now?
So for me, I don't think it's a problem. I think it's fine. It's not. I don't think it's such a. It's there. It's a contributing issue, but I don't think it is fair to say because we don't want paternity fraud, therefore let's have less women in the workforce. I don't think that's a good argument. So if you've been in, women go to school. If you've been in schools with women, you've been in functions with women, you work with women. I think it's up to you as a man to draw those boundaries for yourself. I believe in people taking personal responsibility for whatever choices that they make. So I don't believe it is we should go, oh yeah, why did you sleep with the other man's wife? Oh, they are women in the workforce now, and I couldn't. Nobody's going to find that. Like it's a personal. Everybody has to. So no matter how the workforce changes, okay, even if tomorrow we're having, I don't know, children or aliens from outer space, they will come. There's going to be different things that are going to show up, and you just have to deal with it. So I don't think those are fair excuses or excuses.
It's just that it's just that those of us who are Calvinists, permit me to use that word. Those of us who are Calvinists, I remember that Pastor John MacArthur was talking about how one of the biggest challenge to the American home today is this idea of a working mother. Of course, I am not against women working. My own wife works, but he said that there is something that happens to the authority that a man has over a woman when another man has the same authority over her outside, because in this Nuhu Moyo Thomas kind of situation, this thing actually started from a place of authority. We don't know the full story, but many people have said this. They said that many times before the woman gets the job, the boss sleeps with her. Now that she gets the job, the boss continues to, make those advances, and the woman that doesn't have a strong distance will continue to give in and all of those things. So MacArthur actually said it. He said that if the family can help it, if they can handle it, then the man should work, the woman should stay at home and take care of the children, build a home from, probably even work from home if she eventually wants to work, but not a situation where the man is exercising authority over her at home, and then she's having to also obey her boss outside. What do you think about that scenario?
Okay, so I'll disagree somewhat. For me, I still believe that the onus lies on the man. So for me, I like that's why when I say don't be a girly man, this kind of what I mean. So as a man, you shouldn't come around and say, oh, someone else has authority over my wife at work and we're sharing this authority. You should be the leader of that household. And I think the time now is a point where you should be a leader indeed. Okay. So when you marry your wife, ideally, I think your wife should be the sort of man that your wife should look up to, that your wife should respect. And you don't just become that kind of man by being her husband and then limiting her. Okay? Rather, it should be such that your authority is such that even if she goes to work, if you've built yourself as a man, if you've built yourself You've built yourself career-wise, you've built yourself character-wise as a person.
Yes.
You've shown that you're dependable. You've shown, that she can trust you. She can look to you for leadership. You're leading. If you hold the home front well, who is the boss in the office?
Yeah.
Who is he? It's like, I don't know. There's something we miss today. If you grew up like some of us grew up in families where we had strong fathers, where daddy's word is, you had a strong dad. Now, quite so sometimes, like now these days, it's like, oh, we want to be friends with the kids and things like that, and that's fine. That has its place. But when you have a strong father, as much as you fear him, you respect him. And there's something else you know that when you step outside and anyone messes with you, or you can always come back and your father has your back. So if you're, and it was about the way our fathers carried that authority, in the house. And as a man, if you develop yourself to that point, if you're that kind of man who has that, it's a charisma thing. It's something you have to build with your character. Such that your wife will go out, someone will make advances at her, and she will come back and tell you that so and so and so and so did so and so and so and so. Okay? Because she trusts that I can tell my man and he will handle it. Like, let's say your wife goes out, someone molests her or someone touches her inappropriately, and she knows if she tells you, okay, like something Adibe said, that you can do anything, he'll forgive you. But if you touch his wife, I don't know if you saw that. Like if you touch his wife, he'll send you to eternity. Like it's that kind of that. He might be saying that like as a joke, but I think that man was very, very serious. He doesn't play with his wife. And if you're that kind of man where you don't play with your wife, knows that she can come back to you and say, so this so and so man touched me inappropriately or did so and so thing to me, and she knows you will handle it. Okay? If that kind of thing happens, it's unlikely that someone else will have some authority over her that will now compromise her. That's what I believe anyway.
So that she has that sense of security.
She has that sense of security in you.
And many times, even those our female colleagues at work, the ones that are married, there's this kind of when she bears her misses. There's this. You've never seen her husband, but you know that he has an aura, and you have to respect. This is the ones that are not married. Sometimes we're a little bit more freer with them, but of course, they still. You still create those boundaries, and those ladies are still going to be the wives of some other people someday. Yeah. Thank you, Festus, for that perspective. What do you think happened to Tunde Thomas? I suspect that the shock that he endured probably came from the fact that maybe, I'm not sure, but do you think that he wasn't, that the news was kind of surprising to him, that could lead him to have almost like a nervous breakdown and eventually having a heart attack? What do you think? Is this something that happens with men that could happen to a man?
I don't know exactly what happened with Tunde Thomas. So I know the story, but part of me feels he was on for 2 years after that, and then eventually, unfortunately, he lost his life. But what I feel, I kind of believe whatever could have happened. All right, I believe it would hurt. It would hurt. A lot of men would feel hurt. A lot of men will feel emasculated, and that's the major thing. Because that's the major thing. It's the emasculation, I think, that hurts more. So
or probably the separation from the children. Maybe that's something else also.
The separation from the children, that could contribute. Right? For me, I think first, if your hurts that your wife cheated on you, that is that. Then you feel sort of dishonored, like disgraced, so to speak. And then there's that, and then there's those children. Maybe then if you've come to love those children, that makes things even more difficult. It makes it a lot more. It's just a very messy situation. I don't know what happened exactly for Tunde Thomas, but it wasn't a very good thing, and it's not something I would wish on anybody.
Yes, definitely. And when you talk about loving the children, I have 2 children, and there's there's a storyline between myself and those children. You know, the first one, when the first one was born, even though I never claimed to hear God say anything, but I was almost sure that God gave me the name of that first child. The second child, the name came providentially. Somebody suggested it, and I eventually accepted it. You know, but you know, there's this thing about the way they were born, how they grew up, how they beat illness. You know, there's that thing. I personally think maybe that's, I'm going back to that first question I gave you, that maybe that is the reason why I cannot, it doesn't matter what had happened. Of course, there'll be a lot of pain, there'll be a lot of, you know, pain and disappointment, but I can't see myself asking for those children to leave, even if they are not mine, because the truth of the matter is that it's more than a chemistry. It's I think the word is bond between yourself and children. I mean, you're not saying something, it is not flimsy, but I don't think it's strong enough to break one's relationship with those children. What do you think about that?
I think one other way to look at it, sometimes there's someone you're neglecting in this story, and that's the mother. Okay. So what would you do with the mom? Would you forgive her and let her stay and continue with the kids? Like you continue living together as a family?
Yeah, I can ask that question if you, it's not rhetorical. Okay. So I actually brought up the question with my wife, and she was so upset. It wasn't even anything like answering. She was just upset about the whole idea. She was okay. You know. So, but if I mean, God forbid it happens, if it ever. In fact, I told my friends at office today about this interview, and then I was telling him, I said, look, if ever we're going to go to the embassy and we're going to do a DNA, I will have to tell my wife upfront, because she's the one that is being put on the spot. So I'm going to have to tell her upfront that regardless of the result, those children are not mine. I'm still going to take them. But you would have to tell me what happened, though. But I was still going to take them. You know, I think that I will find grace. I'm not saying I can. I'm going to have to depend on God, but I'm going to find grace to forgive this woman. I'm going to find grace to move on. You know that scripture that people say that you cannot divorce, that Jesus said? He said you cannot divorce except for fornication. You remember that scripture? I think you mentioned it earlier. Now, I personally do not think, I remember that during my NYSC, Pastor Kumuyi was teaching it in the Deeper Life Church I attended. And he said that thing was actually not marriage. You know, he kind of traced the Jewish root or word for it. I don't know how true that is. He said it was some kind of engagement, you understand, that you could break up. But the minute it becomes marriage, even adultery is not strong enough to break it. And that's my position. That Kumuyi explanation has been the position I held. Okay, that even adultery or fornication cannot break marriage. Of course, it's going to wound it. You know, it's going to do a lot of things, but we're just going to trust God to wade through it and ask the Lord to help us. So that's my thought.
I'll need God's grace to like forgive. It's hard. It's so hard, but I don't think there's something I've maybe Kumuyi is right, or maybe he's wrong. The way I've always understood it anyway is that except for cases of sexual immorality, then you can, because I don't know how Kumuyi interpreted it. I don't understand the Greek, so I wouldn't venture into that. But there are things that I don't think marriage was designed to be a prison. Okay, I think marriage, even though when I write about how marriage feels like a prison, is a prison, I talk about it, how is marriage really worth it anymore? Like what can you really gain anymore from marriage? But I believe that the biblical way for marriage is you were meant to meet your wife, she was meant to be a helpmate for you. Two of you were supposed to work together. We're going back to Adam, you know, she was supposed to help him, then the earth, fill the earth, multiply, increase. You're meant to grow together. You're meant to work as partners. Okay? And the bond, what binds you to your wife is the sexual relations you have. That's sort of how you seal that deal. Now, for your wife to go and be with another person sexually is to break a very fundamental thing in your marriage contract. And so I think when Jesus is talking, he would be, that's what I think Jesus meant. So once your wife does that, or when you do that,
okay, that was actually going to be my second question.
You can be I think you can still be forgiven. For me anyway, I've decided something early, which is if my wife cheats on me, I can forgive it. Okay? Like I understand people get tempted. I can totally understand I intend to have the sort of relationship where we'll be so open to each other, where if a temptation is starting, from the point it is starting, we'll be able to say, look,
this is what is happening.
This is what I'm feeling, or this is what I'm thinking. I'm liking this person. Okay. And then we walk up around that. So if we come to a point where she succumbs to our temptation and she cheats, I would expect her to tell me. So I'm not, those are the minor parts for me. The major part for me is the fraud. The major part for me. It's actually the fraud that is the major part for me, not even
I get it. Okay, so Festus, what do you think about men? Because I was asking somebody today and I said, CEO, everybody is shouting, women DNA. But men do this thing, they don't get pregnant, they run off, you understand? So what do you think about men and cheated men? This person said, he said that, because men have always been known as cheaters. You know, we've always had that tag, you know, and women have always held themselves as the saints. So that's why it's news, and it is,
that's why
to say something like, said that it's like a thing of rejoicing to hear like, hey, I think you people are human beings too. What do you think?
I think so. As a man, when you choose to get married, anyway, when you choose to get married, you're committed to somebody. So the same burden on her also lies on you as a man. So if you're expecting her not to cheat on you, you too, you can't cheat. Okay. And so if a man goes outside and cheats, to me, I think if the woman can no longer stay after that, I think she's free to leave. Okay. Now she can forgive and still say, okay, I'm not going to revenge. I'm not going to pay back the hurt. Okay. But she can decide to leave, and I don't believe you can force her to stay. Now there was something I raised for you when I was saying something similar to this. So something similar to this would be, let's say, as a man. So let's say someone comes to you and says, or a sister in your church or something comes and says, "Brother, did you see what my husband is trying to do? So my husband went outside and he slept with somebody, and now they've had a kid." Okay? And the woman that he slept with for some reason doesn't want to have anything to do with the baby. Okay? Now the husband has brought the baby and he wants me to raise it.
Yes.
What should I do? Let's say these are a brother and a sister that you know and you love. Okay? I would ask the man, why are you trying to force? Personally, I would be like, brother, listen, why are you trying to force? Let's even say that the guy you can't deceive a woman into raising a child who's not her, so it's a little different. But in mine, I'll be like, why are you trying to impose this kid on your wife? Like, what sort of wickedness is this? Is it that if the person who has the kid can't take care of it, is there no other person who will take care of it? If you know, because every day your wife looks at that kid, she knows this is not her kid. She remembers, and that's what I believe would happen to a man who is a victim of paternity fraud. Every time you look at that kid, you know this is not your kid. All right, the bond you formed, everything you did out of love now begins to look like something you're doing out of compulsion. Do you understand? Because and it's like living in that life where it's like, okay, I have to love these kids. I don't want to, it hurts that these are not my kids, this is not my wife. Every time you see that hurts instead. And I don't know how to navigate outside of that, as a man. I don't know how to do that.
All right. Okay. Thank you. We're gradually coming to the end of this interview. Okay. I have just two more questions. The first one is, what do you think will likely come out of this FCMB Nuru their managing director thing? What do you think they will do?
I don't think much will happen. Maybe at best he gets fired. At best he gets fired, but I don't think there's anything that happens.
Because I understand that banks are very concerned about their PR and their social their face.
That's just why they probably fire him, but that's about it. Like by law, he hasn't committed a crime.
He hasn't.
By law, like
but some people are saying that they've changed the logo of FCMB now. They say it's not your wife and I. People
your wife no longer safe.
Well, your wife and I.
it's a dent on the bank. It's obviously a dent on the bank. He'll get fired. He was in dispute. There are a lot of offices that have policies in place to curtail such things from happening. So I know somewhere I used to work in where staff were not allowed to date, and if staff began to date each other, they had to declare it to management that, see, we are dating or falling in love. And what the management would normally do is send one of them to another branch or arrange work in such a way that they are not working on the same thing, so that their relationship, they can separate their relationship from
it will remain professional.
So that they can have a professional relationship. And I think NU has broken. I believe FCMB will have a similar policy or some policy to solve that same problem. And if he has, he'll probably get fired. But I think the firing is all that will be, and then maybe nobody hires him again. But that's all. He wouldn't suffer too much. The real victim here is already dead, which is the sad.
Yeah, it's really sad. Yeah. Okay, the last question. So our Mr. Festus Adibe is still a bachelor. Anything on the horizon? When are you going to get into the same trouble that some of us are in right now? Trying to keep ourselves.
Very soon. There's someone, so very soon.
Okay,
very
so you're working on it. Okay.
How
is Enugu?
Enugu is good.
Okay.
Enugu is good. Still very much like you left it when you were here last.
Thank God.
It's a quiet town, but it's nice. Thank you. Anyway.
Thank you. Thank you, Festus, for joining us. Okay, so I've been discussing with Festus Adibe from Enugu. We've been looking at this whole matter of paternity issues and DNA testing from a Christian perspective. Although, of course, we've touched on so many other things, not necessarily on Christianity also. Festus was going to teach me how to link my Zoom to Facebook. So hopefully very soon I'll be able to get that done, and it will no longer be recorded. You'll be able to interact with us in future discussion. So Festus, thank you for joining us. Really, thank you. And I hope that maybe, I'll still be following your timeline. If there's anything interesting you have discussing there, I'll ask you to come and join us and talk about it live.
Right.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. It's a pleasure.
All right, so just hang on. All right, sorry.